Glad that you're here. Glad that you're with us. Glad that you chose to come out and worship God with us. I was just thinking, right before we get started, I was thinking two things. One, when Rellin flickered the lights, I'm glad it wasn't me. I was waiting my turn, so it wasn't me this time. And two, we were talking in the teenage class this morning. We were going through everything that we do before we start the worship service, through the worship service, and start talking about everything. We forgot to add that, flickering of the lights. So we need to add that and talk about that a little bit, because sometimes you got to flicker the lights before we can get started. But that can be part of it. But when you do think about why you do some of the things that you do, and are we just coming in and going through the motions, or are we actually know the things that we're doing, involved in the things that we're doing, have scripture for the things that we're doing, a purpose for the thing that we're doing? And I think that's a good study, and I like when study things like that with the teenagers, because you get into some pretty good questions and some good examples about things, and I think you can learn things. Hopefully strengthens our faith and maybe uplifts our worship as we think more about it. There were three friends that was shipwrecked on an island. They were shipwrecked on this island for a while, pretty good while. And they were all standing on the beach. They'd been doing that day after day after day, month after month, just kind of looking out into the ocean. And happened to be a little lamp, a little genie's lamp washed up on the shore. So they thought, I'll give it a whirl. And they started rubbing that lamp. And sure enough, out pops a genie. That genie said, since you let me out of this lamp, I'll give each of you one wish. So one of them says, well, it's been a long time. I really miss my wife. I miss her cooking. I miss being with her. I wish I was home eating dinner with my wife. Boom. He was sitting at the supper table with his wife. Went to the other, said, what's your one wish? He said, well, I'm not married, but he said, I do have a girlfriend. He said, I do miss her. I miss going out on dates, going to dinner, going to the movies. I really wish I could do that again. And bam, snapping a finger, he's in his car, headed to his girlfriend's house for a date. Goes to that third one. He said, well, what's your wish? He said, I don't know. I've not thought about it very much. He said, what I'm thinking about now, he said, I'm glad my other two friends got their wish, but I sure wish they was back here with me. So, wow, you laughed. Finally laughed at a joke. I was going to give you a little time. I wasn't even going to talk anymore until I got a little laugh. But think about that. Imagine with me tonight that you could have anything that you wanted. Anything that you wanted, you could have. What would you ask for? What would you wish for? Would it be, it could be anything from spiritual things. It could be material things. Do you want riches? Just ask for it. Do you want long health? Just ask for it. Whatever you want. Anything that you can possibly imagine. I mean, think about it. What would you ask for? You get one wish. You get one ask. Is all you get. What would you ask for? I thought about that. I don't know for sure what I would ask for. That's a lot of pressure. I think I'd ask for a bunch more asked so I could, in case I made a mistake the first few times. But think about it. What would you ask for? There was once a man who had asked this very question, was asked this question by God himself. Now, can you imagine that? The little joke I told about Genie and the lamp, of course, that's a fairy tale. That's not real. But imagine if God asked you to ask him for whatever you want. What would you say? What would you ask for? Well, in 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 5, it says that Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, ask what I shall give you. Now think about that. Think about God asking you that. What do you want? What can I give you? You just tell me. What can I give you? I'm sure that if I asked you tonight, if God was to ask you, what do you want? What answer would you give? Would you have the answer of, well, God, I would want everyone to be a Christian. Or I want you, I would like for you to end world hunger, end poverty. Would we ask something like that? Or would we really search our heart and would we say, God, I'd really like a better paying job. I seen this nice car the other day when I was at a red light. I think I'd like that car. Or this better house. Or something. Really, if we were honest with ourselves, what would we ask for? Would we ask for something spiritual? Would we ask for something material? What would it be? Do you know what Solomon asked for? Let's look at his response to God, starting in verse 6 of 1 Kings chapter 3. And Solomon said, "You have shown great mercy to your servant David, to your servant David, my father, because he walked before you in truth and righteousness and in uprightness of heart with you. You have continued this greatness for him. You have given him a son to sit on his throne as it is this day. Now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king instead of my father David. But I am a little child. I do not know how to go out or come in. And your servant is in the midst of your people whom you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to be numbered or counted. Therefore give to your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, that I may discern between good and evil, for who is able to judge this great people of yours?" Now, what is it that Solomon said that he wanted more than anything? Wisdom. Now, can you imagine that? Think about it. Some say Solomon's is about 20 years old here. I don't know how old he is. He says himself he's young. He says himself, I'm feeling the pressure. I don't know if I can fulfill this role. I'm kind of overwhelmed here. I'm in a pretty big position. So I need wisdom to be able to do the job like I should for the people and for you, God. So this is what he asked for. God asked him, "What do you want?" And of everything in the world, this is what Solomon said, "This is what I want." Is this what you would ask for? You might if you were in his position. You might if you were overwhelmed like he was. You might if you were feeling the pressure like he was and knowing that you got some pretty big shoes to fill in that position. And the responsibility, again, not only to the people but to God. So Solomon is saying, here's what I want. I want to be able to do this. And not only do I want to be able to do it, I want to be able to do it right. And to be able to do it right, I need wisdom. I need that ability to discern. I need that ability to understand, to function like I should. Now notice, in 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 10, said the speech pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this thing. God was tickled to death with this, wasn't he? This is what Solomon wanted. He asked him. I don't know if it was a test for Solomon to see what he would say, but what Solomon said pleased God. God was happy with what Solomon said. God was happy with his answer. So notice what God said to him. He starts here in verse 11. He says, "Then God said to him, because you have asked this thing, and have not asked long life for yourself, nor have asked riches for yourself, nor have asked the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern justice, behold, I have done according to your words. See, I have given you a wise and understanding heart, so that there has not been any one like you before, nor shall any like you arise after you. And I've also given you what you've not asked for, both riches and honor, so that there shall not be anyone like you among the kings all your days. So if you walk in my ways to keep my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your days." So Solomon asked for wisdom. This pleased God. And God said, because you asked this, I'm happy about it. I'm going to give it to you. But not only am I going to give you that, I'm going to give you more because you didn't ask for wealth. Would you have asked for wealth? He said, you didn't ask for long life. What about you or me? Would we have asked for long life? Or you didn't even ask for the life of your enemies. Now that's one probably I would ask for. God, give me 2 wishes. 1, I want long life, and 2, take them out. I've got a list. You know, he's telling Solomon, because Solomon's king, and being in the household of David, you know he's got many enemies. You know he's got all of these things that's going on. And God said, you didn't ask for any of this. And because you didn't ask for any of this, I'm going to give you riches anyway. I'm going to give you long life anyway. I'm going to make you so there's not going to be anyone like you before or after you. Now, this alone says a lot about Solomon, and it says a lot about God. If we do the right thing, God's not only going to bless us, He'll bless us more than we could even think, doesn't He? Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. What things? All the things we don't think about. Now, this isn't a health and wealth sermon, oh, just be positive thinking and ask God and you're going to have it. This is if we trust God, if we're doing the right thing is going to turn out in the end eventually with a great reward in heaven. Don't get any greater than that. But think about it. He was asked, what do you want? He said, I need wisdom. God said, I'm happy about that. I'm going to give you wisdom, and I'm going to give you much more than wisdom. Now, let's kind of fast forward here, where we get to near the end of Solomon's life. What sort of life do you think that Solomon had? Now, when God asked him, what do you want? And He tells him, Solomon's young then. Then we get to the kind of end of Solomon's life. What kind of life do we have in between there? What kind of life did Solomon live? Now, you'd think Solomon would have lived in such a way to where, you look at the beginning of his life, and if you've seen it, you'd say, well, here's going to be someone great. And he was. But as we see the end of his life, I think at the beginning, if I was around Solomon and all the wisdom, see the things he'd done, I'd say, let's write a memoir here. Let's publish this. Probably make some money off of it. Well, we've got a memoir. We've got Ecclesiastes of Solomon going over all of his life, reflecting back on all of his life. And as he reflects back on all of his life's not exactly what you think it would have been. He indulged in pleasure. He indulged in, multiple wives. He indulged in anything that his heart desired. That's what Solomon did. He didn't withhold anything from himself. Matter of fact, what he said. If I wanted it, I took it. If I wanted to do it, I did it. It didn't make any difference to him. He was in a position he could do whatever he wanted to do. And that's what he did. Now, is that a good use of wisdom? Is that a good use of understanding? Is that a good use saying, well, I've got all this wisdom, got all this knowledge, I've got everything that I need, I'll just do whatever I want to do? Well, that's, I think, what we see that Solomon did. I think along the way, we see that Solomon may have forgot what was important in life until he got to the end of his life. When he got to the end of his life, I think he's like a lot of people when they face death, when something happens or they get closer in age where you realize there's more time behind you than there is in front of you, you start thinking of things a little bit different. You start looking back at your life. You start looking back at how you lived your life. And you start trying to put it in perspective, try to put it in focus, try to put it in a priority. And I think that's what we see with Solomon in Ecclesiastes. But what I want us to do tonight is I want us to look at Solomon's main idea for the whole book. I think the main idea in the whole book is pretty much what is life? Is it really worth living? Well, what is life all about? What's the purpose of life? I think that's the whole gist of what Ecclesiastes is. Let's look at Ecclesiastes chapter 1, begin at verse 1 here. It says, the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What profit has a man from all his labor in which he toils under the sun? Now what I want us to do, I want us to look at a few key statements in just these 3 verses tonight. I think that clearly gives us an overview of what Solomon's purpose is of writing this book. The first one is vanity. He's saying, some translations even say meaningless. It's meaningless. Now in the Hebrews, if you repeat a word once, that's for emphasis. But here in this verse, he repeats it, 5 times? It's vanity. It's vanity. As I said, some translation is it's meaningless. Life is meaningless. Can you imagine looking back and looking over life and saying, it's all just vanity? It's all just meaningless. Now, is that a way for a wise person to look at life? Is that the way that we should look at life? When you think about Solomon's description of life here, he just pretty well says it's meaningless. It's like a vapor. That's what James says. Life is but a vapor. It appears for a little time, then vanisheth away. Solomon even takes it a little bit different. He said life is the vapor itself. It doesn't do anything. It's just meaningless. Now what we're going to see is the reason Solomon says this from the point of view of us and what we focus on or what our priorities are or how we live our life. If we live our life in this certain way, it's useless. It's meaningless. It's worthless. It doesn't mean anything. So maybe what we can ask ourselves tonight by the time this lesson is over is my life worthless? Is my life meaningless? Is there any purpose to it at all? Well, Solomon gives us some advice when it comes to that. Again, it's a pretty blunt conclusion that Solomon comes from. He actually utilizes this word vanity, I think it's some 30 times in the book of Ecclesiastes. 30 times when he talks about life, he says vanity. Vanity. It's puffed up. It depends on how you want to use vanity. Some use it as meaningless. Some use it as puffed up, that it's all about self. And I think that's where Solomon is getting to. If we just focus on ourselves, our wants, our needs, our desires. Because that's what Solomon did. He said, if I wanted it, I did it. I got it. If I wanted to do it, I did it. I didn't withhold anything from me. If I wanted satisfaction, I did anything I could to get it. And his point is, he never got it. He never got the satisfaction that he was looking for. And I tell you, here's what we've got to understand, is whether it's us, whether it's a co-worker, whether it's a family member, whether it's a neighbor, whoever it is, even if they're not Christians, there's individuals that are looking for God and don't even know they're looking for Him. You know how we know that? Because they're searching. They're searching for something to fill a hole. They're searching for something to fill a void. They think if I just do this, that will fill this void. Whatever it is, that's going to fill that void. And they do that, but it don't fill the void. So they do something else. They search, they move, they search, they move around, they search, and they're looking over here, they're looking over there, they're grasping onto this, they're grasping onto that, and they can't find it. They're going everywhere looking for it. They don't realize they're looking for it. We don't realize we're looking for it, but we're looking for something. How do I know they're looking for God? Because God, as we're going to see, is the only one that can fill that void. So if you're looking for something to fill the void, God's the only one that can do that. So you may be looking for Him and don't realize that you're looking for Him. But that's the conclusion that Solomon is coming to here. What Solomon is saying is that when he considers his wealth, when he considers his work, when he considers even his wisdom, in fact, everything in his life, he comes to this conclusion. Look in Ecclesiastes 2 and verse 11. Here's the conclusion. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had done, on the labor in which I had toiled, and indeed all was vanity and grasping for the wind. There was no profit under the sun. He said, I considered my works, I considered my labors, I considered everything I've done. It's like grasping on the wind. What have you got? You've got nothing. You're grasping for it, but when you look at it, you're not holding on to anything. It's not there. You know, you look at the wind, you can't see it. I was watching up late the other night, and there was a new series of documentaries on Dale Earnhardt. I'm always a big race fan, so I had to watch that. They always said he wore his, he always wore an open-face helmet, and he said he wanted to do that so he could feel the air. And they'd always tease him and said he's the only one on the racetrack could actually see the air. He could see it, so he knew how the cars move and everything. Well, he couldn't see air. We can't see air. We can grasp at it. We can think we can control it, but we can't. We grab it, and it's nothing. As he says here, that's what Solomon says. There's no profit under the sun. It's like grasping for the wind. It's to no avail. We can flail around all we want to, but it does no good. But we're trying. We're trying. We spend a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of pursuit and grasping for it. In the end, when we look, we got the same thing that we started with. Nothing. It doesn't amount to anything. And that's what Solomon is saying. So when he says it's vanity, he says it's all for nothing. But then notice the next phrase. What profit has a man, he says. So in doing all of that, and going after every pleasure that you want, going after and doing all of these things, what profit is it in the end? In the end, what profit do we get at? Many people are climbing the ladder of success. And what happens when they get to the top? You know what happens? They find out that the ladder's leaning on the wrong wall. They did all that for nothing. Now, I'm not knocking success. I'm not knocking doing things in the world. Solomon's talking about if this is what you're pursuing, this is what you're trying to grasp. You know, you're trying to. It's like what is that? The pursuit of happiness. How do you pursue that? Really? Oh, I have this goal because if I pursue this path, I get here and that's going to make me happy. It sounds good. Maybe we all talk about that on Wednesday night, one of the scams that's out there. It sounds good, the pursuit of happiness. How do I pursue happiness? Well, actually think, okay, this is going to make me happy if I just get to here. Well, you get to there, are you happy? If I could just get to here, well, we get there, does that satisfy us? Now, can I enjoy my life along the way? I'm talking about if that's what I'm pursuing, happiness itself. Happiness is a byproduct. You know, blessed is he. You know, you can go through the blesseds there in Matthew. It's a byproduct of living the way that we should. Living for God, that's where happiness comes. But what Solomon is saying, under the sun now, he says, what profit is a man? What does it profit? What am I gaining from it? Is it meaningless or not? There's things that we do on this earth, if our labor is meaningless as far as this life is concerned, what is there? Well, notice how Jesus says it in Matthew chapter 6. It says, don't lay up for yourself treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourself treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys, where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. You know what Jesus is saying? What you're chasing, what you consider your priority, what you consider treasure to you, that's where your heart's going to be. And if it's of the things of this world, that's where it is. But what happens? Moth and rust, thieves, nothing. It's going to be gone. Isn't that what Solomon says? Here's all this work that you do. Here's all these things that you do. Here's all these things that I've pursued. Here's all these things I've done in my life. What do I really have in the end when I'm facing death? When I'm facing the end, did that matter? Does it matter when I stand before God and say, God, I got everything I desired. Wanted that car, I got it. Wanted that house, I got it. Wanted that trip, I took it. Wanted this, I did it. Now, are these bad things? No, not bad things at all. But if that's what I consider my treasure, and that's what I'm banking on, that's where all my eggs are in that basket, what am I holding at the end? Where's it going to be then? And I think that, again, that's what Solomon is saying. In our scripture reading, Mark 8, verse 36, remember what Brian read just a few moments ago? What profit is it to a man if he gain the whole world and lose his soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? Say you get everything that you want, but you lose your soul, what do you have? What's left? What really matters? You got everything that you wanted. And I've not seen too many where I just thought had more money than what they can do with, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what you consider rich. I used to work with a guy all the time. He talked about how much money he thought somebody had. So much. What's rich? Who knows? But I've seen a lot of unhappy ones that I thought had everything they wanted. They were miserable. They were unhappy. I've seen some with no money unhappy. I've seen some that's rich and happy, some that's no money happy. Is that what makes us happy or sad? Is that what we're striving for? If that's all that we're striving for, we're not going to find it. We can't find it. We're not filling that void. We can live any way we please until a brush of death comes and makes us reevaluate life, doesn't it? Death is a judge who questions the worthiness of our lives, doesn't it? Death is someone said, a litmus test, indicating the quality of the way we lived our life. Death's a knife that divides the world into the fearful and the unafraid, the remorseful and those at peace, the angry and the accepting, the hopeless, the hopeful. When we're faced with it, being at a funeral home, if I've heard it one time, I've probably heard it I don't know how many times. There's two things you hear all the time at funeral home. One of them's Vince Gill. I mean, you got to have Vince Gill, go rest high on the mountain. And the other is the dash. A preacher will talk about the dash at the cemetery. You know, you got the birth date, you got the death date, and you got that dash in the middle. They said that dash is what's important, how you live your life. I don't agree with that. I think it's that death date what's important. Now, how you live your life in the middle determines that last date, but that last date is final. That's what matters. When that date comes, what do we have? When that date comes, where are we at? I think that's why Solomon wrote Ecclesiastes here. I think that's what he's teaching. That's what he's telling. That next one coming up is, here's how I live my life. Here's all the things that I've seen. Here's all the things that I've done. And you know what I figured out? In all of my wisdom, it don't mean anything if you just focus on those things. It's meaningless. Don't search out those things. Don't put all your effort in grasping at that, because when you hold on to it, you still don't have anything, because that hole is still going to be there. It's not going to fill it. If you're chasing it to try to fill a hole, you'll never do it, because we're searching for the wrong thing. Again, Solomon is an old man. He's looking back on all his accomplishments from a human standpoint. Solomon has accomplished a lot in his life. He's been king over Israel, built great buildings, accumulated great wealth, lived life to its absolute fullest. But in the earthly prophet column, he was way ahead. He was way ahead. But However, Solomon is now an old man. He's staring death in the face. We can fool ourselves into ignoring the important questions of life until we're faced with death. And then we have to face those lessons, don't we? We have to face those questions. So he says, what does it profit? But notice also, the other phrase that he used was under the sun. Solomon says that there is a specific understanding of under the sun. The phrase occurs 29 times in the book of Ecclesiastes. Solomon is letting us know that he is looking at life from an earthly viewpoint. He said if all of our treasure, if everything that we're striving for is under the sun, it's not going to amount to anything. As Jesus said, rust, moth, thieves, they're going to come in and get it anyway. And as Solomon puts it, you're going to die, somebody else is just going to get it. Somebody else is going to do something with it. You built this great building, somebody's going to come along and tear it down. Built this great statue to yourself, somebody's going to come along, knock it down, and build another one. You accumulated all this wealth, somebody else is going to spend it. Now, did you enjoy it? Yeah. But he says from an earthly standpoint, when it comes to the end, what do you really have? A great statue, great building, a lot of money. But what's that going to do for you in the end? In Psalms 37, verse 4, David says it this way, delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. See, he uses the phrase under the sun or under heaven. He's contrasting a life lived on an earthly perspective with one lived from a heavenly perspective. One lived from a heavenly perspective is understanding this is just life here. There's something beyond. And when we realize there's something beyond this, it makes this here a little bit more worthwhile. It makes this life here under the sun worth living. Because Jesus said, I came to give you life and give it to you more abundantly. And he wants us to live an abundant life. But not like Solomon is talking about here. I think that's what Solomon is trying to say. The abundant life is not found in things. Things are enjoyable. Things are nice. They're nice to have. But if that's all that you want, you don't really have anything. That's not the abundant life. The abundant life is living this life. Remember that first conversation I had with Solomon and God? He said, you looked after my father David because he followed your will, and God said, I'm going to give you these things if you continue to do that. See, it was conditional on, I'm going to be with you, Solomon, as long as you're with me. As long as you're following me, this is what I'll do for you. And Solomon realizes that's all it's about. Because you get to Ecclesiastes chapter 12, and look at verse 1. He says, remember now your Creator in the days of your youth before the difficult days come, and the years draw near when you say, I have no pleasure in them. Notice how he says, and I like how he puts this, remember your Creator. He didn't say, remember God. He didn't say, remember your Lord. He said, remember your Creator. Now, is it the same one? Yeah. But I think he uses this for a purpose. Remember your Creator. Remember you were created and you have a Creator. You remember Him. And if you remember Him, especially starting in your youth, that's going to be a lot better for your life. You keep God close to you, you remember that Creator. And that's what Solomon gets back to. I've done all of these things, but you know what it boils down to? Don't forget about your Creator. You're just a creation. We're special to God, but we're His creation. He's the Creator. He said, remember that in your youth. Then he goes on down to verse 6. And in verse 6 he says, remember your Creator again before the silver cord is loose, or the golden bowl is broken, or the pitcher shattered at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the well. In other words, you remember God when you're young, but you also better remember Him when you're older too. In other words, remember God. Remember your Creator. That's what it's all about. And that's why he said in verse 13, Remember when he comes to the conclusion? He said, let's hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God, keep His commandments, for this is man's all. For God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good and evil. You're going to face your Creator. You're going to face your Judge. And what's going to happen when you face that? He said, we need to fear Him, keep His commandments, because that's our all. Why? Because He's the Creator and we're the creation. That's what we're created for. We're created to serve Him. That's our purpose. That's what makes life worth living. Not all these things. That's what Solomon's saying. It's not all these things that makes life worth living. It's God. Serving God. That's what makes life worth living. So, as we go back to our original question, if God was to ask you, what do you want? What would you want? What would that be? You know, Solomon is a great lesson, I think, for us. Maybe you're here tonight and you're putting off obeying the gospel. What are you putting it off for? What reason? What are you holding on to? What are you saying, this is worth more than my soul? Solomon done shows us there's nothing. There's nothing worth it. Say you get whatever you're holding out for. What does it matter in the end? It doesn't. All that matters is keeping His commandments. By having faith in Him, repenting of our sins, confessing that Jesus is the Son of God, being baptized for the remission of those sins, and living that faithful life to Him. You have an opportunity to do it tonight. Don't grasp for the wind, grasp for Him. Remember what Isaiah said? It's not that his hands are too short that he can't grab you. It's not that his ears are stopped up and he can't hear you. It's your sins that separate you from God. That's what's holding you back. Let that go. Wash them away. Maybe you're here tonight and you've done that, but you strayed away. Maybe you forgot what's important in life. Maybe you're grasping at the wrong thing. You're not walking in the light anymore. You can come back to Him tonight. We can pray for you. We'll pray with you as together we stand and as we sing.
Jesus the Lord laid His glorious